The Czech Pirc defense is one of my favorite options for black against the move of e4, in which case we're starting out with a Pirc. We're playing the move of knight f6 and now c6. And I talk about this in my over 6-hour course on the Czech Pirc. If you'd be interested in taking your Czech Pirc to the next level, you can check out the link in the description below. But this move of c6 really does accomplish three things at the start. Number one, we are neutralizing the knight on c3, so that knight just can't come to our side of the board. I mean, the pawn on c6 is completely stopping that knight from ever thinking about that. On top of that, by playing this move of c6, we are supporting potential d5 or b5 pawn pushes, and we're also giving our queen flexibility. Now, there's different things that white can do. By far the most challenging, in my opinion, option for white against the Czech Pirc is the move of pawn to e4. White here, taking up 3 pawns in the center, and in my course, I recommend the move of queen to a5 by doing this. You're pinning the knight, you're threatening knight takes e4, and you're also looking to support the move of pawn to e5. And if the move of bishop to d3, we can now play e5 striking in the center. The game I'm showing you, which so far this is exactly how it played out, was played by Grandmaster Varuzhan Akobian back in the year of 2006 in the 34th World Open held in Philadelphia. And he won this game in 17 moves. And against a strong opponent, and white here played the move of knight to f3. Knight to f3. Now, there's different things that we can think about here. We could think about taking on d4. We could think about bishop g4. And the game here, knight bd7 is played. And generally speaking, it's not a good idea for white to take with the f-pawn there. That's just not a good idea because we're going to capture back. We're going to have the option to take on d4. And once d4 is captured, we're going to have a nice diagonal accessible by both our bishop on f8 and our queen. That diagonal is very accessible, whether that's looking at c5, whether that's looking at b6. Both of those pieces can look at it, and you can't stop it from breaking open, and you don't have a pawn on f2. So if you castle, your king is vulnerable to attack. But returning here, white played a much better move, which is bishop to e3. Akobian continues with bishop to e7. We have castling, and now the move of queen to e1. And we got to be careful here. A lot of players think about the bishop being on d2 and then having to worry about knight to d5. And that's completely true. It turns out it's the same thing for a queen on e1 in this kind of position. Okay, same kind of deal for a queen on d2. If we just make a move here, let's say we play a6. Let's just say we play that move. We're not in good shape at all. White can play knight to d5, and we can't take their queen because if we do, white has an in-between check, not on f6 where we'd get captured, or the knight would get captured, that is, but on e7 where the knight can't get captured, then white takes the queen. We as black, we're down a piece. We're down a piece there. So we'd really be forced, more or less, to play the move of queen to d8, and there, white can take the bishop. And I know that that bishop wasn't active, but as mentioned, it can get very active later on in the game, along this a7 to g1 diagonal specifically, and this is really the glue that keeps the Czech Pirc together. You're covering key dark squares, you're covering the knight, you're covering d6. Now your queen has to do that, and here white could take on e5. In this case, they're not so worried about this diagonal breaking open because we don't have a dark squared bishop. We could see the move knight to h4, knight to f5, is something that white is looking at. Sure, we could play g6, but then by doing that, we're weakening our dark squares, which isn't a lot of fun. This just gets worse and worse by the move. So if you do see a bishop come to d2 or a queen come to d2 or e1, you got to be looking at this knight d5 idea. Does it work in this position? Yes. So we see the move of queen to c7. Now, if you want to play knight d5, I mean, Akobian would have just took the knight clean off. And here white makes their first mistake. And that's the move of knight to h4. Now, I understand the thought process behind this. I myself, when I'm playing as white, love the typical ideas that you can get when you get a knight to f5. The square of f5 is such a dangerous spot, whether you get a pawn there in a lot of cases, a knight. The problem here is that black has knight to g4, which is exactly what Akobian did. And this is really what I want to focus on because at the end of the game, white ended up blundering and the game ended quickly. But this is some interesting theory here. If you see the move of knight to h4, with the queen on e1, think about knight g4. Just consider it in general, because here you're eyeing up the knight and the bishop on e3. Now, one might wonder, why can't white just play h3? Well, the problem is that the queen is overworked. You're defending the bishop and you're defending the knight. You just can't do both forever. I mean, if we take the knight on h4 and then we take the bishop, that's great, we're winning. We could also take the bishop first and then the knight. This is what the computer likes, and either one is just completely crushing. So this is a major threat that white needs to be worried about. They need to be concerned about this. And if white runs away with the bishop, let's say to d2 or something, well, you just drop the pawn on d4. So white here really needs to play the move of knight to f5, which is what white did. And here Jacobian misses the engine move, which is bishop to f6. And this is just a fantastic position for us. All the ways in which case white can give up those dark squares is really astonishing. I mean, if you take with the f pawn here, which is your best move, we're going to take back with the d pawn, and we have good pressure against your bishop. We have good pressure against the pawn on d4, and we have the move of queen to b6 that is in the mix in terms of looking at the king and the pawn on b2. I quickly wanted to mention that I am giving out private chess lessons for those of you interested in taking your game to the next level. Chess is a hard game. There's a lot of different areas. I've had students, want to work on something specific. Players reaching out going, hey, I want to work on the hippopotamus defense. I want to get better at the hippo. I've had students go, hey, I want to work on the endgame, calculation, tactics, whatever it may be. I've had other students that go, hey, I actually don't really know what I need to work on, but I'm just trying to improve. I want to hit this certain ELO range or this certain title or whatever it may be. And yeah, I mean, chess is a very fun game. It does take a lot of work and a lot of focus. I love to work with students to assess their strengths and weaknesses and look to turn those weaknesses into strengths, as well as give them a curriculum in which case they can work on and work with to improve their game as a whole. If you are interested in private lessons, make sure to check out the description below. You can reach out there, and there's no strings attached. There's no strings attached if you want to reach out and just talk about, if this is something that would be beneficial for you or not. And if you do decide to get lessons, I look forward to hanging out and yeah, just chopping up some chess with you and helping you improve your game. Let's now head back to the main video. Now let's say instead of f takes e5, white plays the move of d takes e5. Well, this is slightly worse for white because when you take with the f pawn in that position, you have your rook that is active, right? And again, in this kind of spot, I know earlier I was saying f takes e5 is a bad idea, but that's because this diagonal was so accessible for our bishop. Now our bishop is on f6. So the bishop's not going to be able to get to c5 anytime soon, but this could still go very bad for white very quickly. For example, you play a move like rook to d1, we're getting rid of your bishop, and that's your good bishop because the bishop on d3 has light squares surrounding it. We're able to take on f4, and if you take with the queen here, we capture, we play g6, and if you throw in a check here, it looks fun, but it just doesn't really do much. And if you play the engine move knight to g3, we can throw in a check on d4, play bishop e5, kicking the rook, knight to c5. How are you going to kick these pieces out? The bishop on d3 can never get to e5. Both of white's knights are 2 squares diagonal, which means that it would take the knight's 4 moves when looking at the geometry of the chessboard to even get to the square of e5. So these knights are terribly placed, and they're both neutralized by our pawns on c6 and on g6 there. What a beautiful position for the black side. The knight on c5 as well, very active. Bishop to e6, bishop to g4, stuff that we could look at, putting a rook on d8. We're sitting at even material. We're sitting at that, but Stockfish gives black a minus 2.5 because white's pieces just can't do much. And returning to bishop f6, if we see something like rook d1, white going, hey, I'm not going to take anything here. Well, we could get rid of your bishop, your good bishop. Now, I know right now the bishop wasn't looking at anything, but that bishop is probably going to be playing in a game where white takes something or we take something, and then the bishop has more activity. The bishop on d3, it's just stuck. And here in this case, we are able to take on d4, play queen to b6, doubling up against that knight, looking at the pawn on b2, and you can't just stop both because, well, the queen drops. Returning to this position, though, Jacobian did not go with the move bishop f6, but instead chose knight df6. And white here really needs to get rid of this bishop. The bishop on e7 is such an underrated piece in the Czech Pirc. It really brings attacking ideas together later on when it comes to opening up diagonals. It's such a great piece in terms of attacking the king on the king side or the queen side. Whenever that bishop opens up, it's the glue that keeps the defense together. White's got to get rid of that bishop. Get rid of it. I know it's strange because there's a pawn and a knight there, but that bishop really is useful. White here could play h3. If we take, capture back, and white's chilling. White's okay. White's okay here. But white ends up playing f takes e5. That's fine. And after d takes e5, white really needed to play knight takes e7 because, again, that bishop could become a very active piece later on in this game. And after d takes and knight takes, we have no way to fight for this diagonal or this one. They're completely taken up. And I, as black, would be thinking about throwing one of my knights in here, but white could quickly slow that down with a move like bishop to g5 or h3. So this is tough for the white side. White ends up taking with the d pawn. And now we have the opportunity, which Jacobian takes advantage of immediately, of playing bishop takes f5, getting rid of the knight so that we preserve our bishop here. If white decides to take on f6, what do we have here? We have a mate in 1. Boom. Game over. So you can't take the knight. And when white takes the bishop, we have knight takes e3, and now knight d7. And this is what I'm talking about with this bishop. The bishop hasn't been doing much. It's been hanging out, doing its thing. But now we're threatening bishop to c5, pinning the queen to the king on the best diagonal available on the board. And white here should have played king h1. If you do that, black's still better. Knight takes e5. What's going to kick the knight out? I don't know. But white here ends up playing queen to g3. Now, sure, bishop c5 check doesn't hold what it did, but because of the fact that this was a threat and that bishop had the queen run away, and now our queen can occupy the diagonal. And, I mean, at this point, no matter what white does, a Jacobian grandmaster player, I'd be shocked if he didn't go on to win this game. I mean, if you move the king, for example, queen takes b2, the knight hanging, the rook hanging. If the rook wants to run away and we take this knight, there's no sacrifice ideas there, eyeing up our queen because there is so much in the bishop's way. But here white makes the mistake of playing queen to f2 and bishop c5, and that's the game. Hope you enjoyed this one on the Czech Pirc. Again, if you're interested in learning more about the Czech Pirc, I will leave a link to my over 6-hour course on it in the description below. I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace. I wanted to finish this video out by giving a big thanks to Walter, Steve, Rob, that's a lot of Robs, Ray, Roger, and the rest of my Patreon community. I appreciate you guys a ton. If you guys haven't checked out the Patreon before, there are some exclusive benefits that you gain by becoming a member, and I look forward to seeing y'all in the next video. Peace.